you for joining us today. My name is Cole Seeger. I'm the marketing director at Beere&Purves. We're very happy to have this hour session with Sarah Dodge over at EaseCentral. I'm sure that many of you are familiar with her, and yeah, so I am not going to take up any more of her time, and I'm going to pass it over to Sarah.
Great, thank you. Thanks everyone for joining. So today we're going to focus on preparing you and your team for your clients' open enrollment and the best practice steps to ensure that your groups have a smooth open enrollment for any groups coming up with an upcoming renewal, which most of them are. We're actually going to go into a lot of detail, and it's very likely that the scenarios that we walk through may not apply to all of your clients. So keep that in mind. We'll walk through a more complex renewal with salary-based benefits and voluntary life, and when benefit eligible dates were previously manually entered or employees are manually locked. So this wouldn't apply to all of your groups that you have set up, but we'll really just cover a lot of ground in this discussion today. So it should cover all the scenarios and plan offerings that you may run into. And it's really a working session that we are reviewing in a webinar setting. So it's informal, and I won't be going through every single step, especially when it comes to downloading censuses and reformatting files for import step by step. But I'll walk you through it, and we should get to everything, which includes really the open enrollment setup best practices, managing open enrollment once it's set up, and those best practices, and then the resources available to you, including really a checklist that's going to walk through each of the steps that I'm walking through today. And I'll actually start by showing you where that checklist is. So when you're logged into EaseCentral, in the help menu, it'll bring you to our help desk, and the checklist is going to be in managing accounts, open enrollment best practices checklist. Feel free to follow along, or at least just reference this at a later time. We'll really be walking through each of those steps in detail. So before we start, I don't have to remind you of fourth quarter. Really, the goal for us at EaseCentral is to create a great and easy solution for you to provide to your clients. And that includes really streamlining and making the open enrollment process much easier and faster for you. Again, we're going through each and every step today. It might seem longer than it typically would take for you and your team, but really the end result goal is to get completed enrollments and applications that you don't have to go back and forth with the employer with multiple times. So really saving you time in the long run by making sure that you do the appropriate steps in the open enrollment setup. I'm not going to talk through on this slide anyway. Each of these steps I'm going to show you actually in person, but as part of the open enrollment setup checklist, these are each of the steps that I'm going to walk us through. And it starts with adding new plans or new plan years. So I'm going to log in as my broker, and Blue's company is the company that's coming up for renewal. The first step is going to be to add all of my new plans for the new plan year, which include new rates, contributions, and forms. Again, in the interest of time, I've done this for all of my plans except for one, and I'll walk you through creating that new plan year for one of our plans, which happens to be the Kaiser Silver plan. So here's a tip that I like to do myself. When I open the plan, I like to copy the plan name. It just makes it easier when I'm actually creating a plan from scratch. So basically, I'm going to create the same plan. This company has the same plans this year, except it's the 2018 version. Just to know, even if there are no changes to the plan except for contributions, you do want to create a brand new plan for each plan year. So I'm going to choose Actions, Add Plan, It is a medical type plan. Once we've selected medical, we have the ability to duplicate any plans that already exist in the system. We're going to duplicate that silver HMO plan. Can't copy this, so that's where I like to paste the plan name from the previous year's plan, changing the year, and I'm going to add the new effective date. And actually, this is a new plan effective January 1st. Clearly, it could be September 1st, December 1st. I'm just pushing it out a little bit farther. So then the best practice is anytime you have current enrollments in the previous plans and you want employees to see what they currently have and be able to keep the enrollments if they don't want to make changes, you'll want to push the enrollments from the previous plan year to the new plan year. And what that does is it just duplicates if Jane Doe and her family were enrolled in this Kaiser plan, it's going to push over or duplicate those same enrollments in the new plan we're creating. So most of the time it is the best practice to push the enrollments, which just means duplicate those enrollments in the new plan you're creating. So we're going to add the plan, and what it does is it copies over all of the details from our previous plan year. Of course, there might be changes, and we will go through those together. The big changes are going to be if there's any eligibility changes. Certainly if there's different locations, divisions, organization types, or new minimum hours requirements, you can make those changes here. The biggest changes are going to be rates. So we're going to set our new rates from our library. I pushed this pretty far ahead. Actually, we don't yet have the rates for January 1st coming soon, but I'm going to add rates for September as if these were for January 1st. So we're just following the steps. And then we're going to choose the plan option. We're going to set the rates, and all of the new rates will populate. Contribution model, if that changed at all this year, we can very easily make those changes. In this case, the employer is keeping the same contribution model. Forms, if there are any changes with the forms that were used from last year, typically the carriers might be coming out with a new form. You can definitely add or search for that new form here and select it. I'm just going to use the same form. I should note that now that we've chosen our rates from the Beere&Purves library, all of these plan details automatically are populating. In addition, any plan documents also populate from the Beere&Purves library, including plan summaries, locating a medical provider, and a prescription drug list. So that's it. We've created a new plan. We've copied the enrollments from the old plan to the new plan. And what we'll be doing is doing that for each of the plans that we have set up in our system. Some plans might be the same, some might have major differences, but we're creating a new plan, and we can always use that duplicate plan option to at least start us off and make any tweaks we need to make. This is probably the hard part. And we just got one plan out of the way very, very easily. So once we have both of our plan years set up, we can leave them both open. And the next step is going to be to go to our open enrollment dates. And we are going to set up open enrollment. So as a best practice, a little bit later, we're definitely going to be testing open enrollment. So even though my open enrollment actually doesn't start until the 14th, I'm going to turn it on today for testing. Certainly, if any employees happen to log in during this time frame, even though they weren't notified, we'll see that on our managed changes reports. And we can leave this on while testing. And if we're done testing and the company administrator is done testing, we can go back and change that date to a later date. But I'm going to leave it open as of either today or yesterday so that we can do some testing. So the start date is when these new plan years will open up for employees. The end date will be the last day of open enrollments, and employees will be able to log in and complete their renewal updates up until 11:59 based on the time zone that their computer is listed in. You may come into this screen and see that the customized plans option is not selected. It is a best practice. You don't always have to use this, but you can select this. And what it does is it allows both plan years to be open. So if you have any new hires that, we have a long way until January 1st that might be hired and need to enroll in the current plan year and then make their open enrollment elections, this allows them to do that. The other option is, let's say that only, Anthem and not Kaiser is included in this open enrollment. We can actually pick and choose which plans we want to include. This is that plan I just created, so we want to make sure that all plans that should be included in open enrollment are selected. It's going to bring up any upcoming plans. You'll notice that it didn't populate any previous plans. Let's say that we're starting open enrollment late and the plan year is actually already started. So it started August 1st and our open enrollment either started or ends after that plan year start date. We can select this late open enrollment option and it's going to pull up plan options and allow us to choose any plans that really the plan year has already started. Most of the time you will not need this. Usually, hopefully you're running your open enrollments before the actual renewal date, so this usually is not needed. Just a note, if you're stumped on any of these, please use our tooltips that will provide more information about each of these steps. So you just hover over them, and then if you want to go to our help desk, you can click on any of these links and it's going to bring you right to that section to learn more about it. We have our open enrollment dates turned on. Now we want to test. So what we're going to do is add a test employee into our company's group. I usually like to call it test employee, so it's pretty evident this is not a real life employee. You can leave this person as an active employee. Just note that it would be included in any reports or forms. Or you can change the status to test. This is a relatively new feature. And if you run reports, if you leave this employee in your group site, it's not going to cause any harm. It won't come up against any reports. The key when you're creating a test employee is to make sure you model it based on the same way your other employees are modeled. So if your other employees have locations, divisions, departments, and job classes assigned, you want to keep that same structure. And in my case, if you have a lot of different eligibility groups, you might want to create a test employee for multiple different groups so that you can test the experience from a variety of different eligibility points of view for an employee. You'll want to add an email address so that you can send a login and test from that employee's point of view. Let's use a hire date in the past, or if you want to test what that new hire election looks like during open enrollment, you can actually add a new hire date. This is a really important one. So if the rest of your employees have hours per week, add hours per week here. If they don't, you don't have to add them. So model this based on how you have your other employees entered in the system. So once we have that test employee added, we would add any additional information. So what's usually missing is if you have salary-based benefits, you'll want to add compensation here to make sure that you are appropriately testing salary-based benefits as well. And then finally, you'll want to send out a login to that employee. I've included my email address here, so likely you'll want to include it to your email address. You can either send a login or you can reset a password so you can log in as that employee. So that's probably the best way to test the true employee experience, which is going to show you any health questions that might pop up to the employee, really the whole process from an employee's point of view. I highly recommend that way of testing. For our purposes today, I'm going to walk through really what you would be testing for, and I'm going to use one of the existing employees in the site. And I'm still logged in as the broker. I'm just pulled this employee up. So not the best way to test, but for our purposes today, it's going to still allow us to view what we need to view. So the first thing I'm testing for is eligibility. So we have open enrollment turned on. I want to make sure that the plan options that are displaying here are truly the plans that this employee buster should have access to. So maybe he works 30 hours and he should have access to dental and all the ancillary coverages, but he should not have access to medical. This is going to be our cue that we need to adjust something in the plan setup to ensure that he should or should not be eligible. I'm going to show you just another option really quickly. In the plan setup, another way to verify eligibility is you can either select all plans, or in this case, let's look at our Kaiser plan. I selected it, and you can also look at this eligibility report that's going to show you who is not eligible for those particular plans. Highly recommend running that report for any of the new plan years that you build. So we're looking at eligibility. If you have plans that are bundled, for example, if health savings account is only available if you're enrolled in medical in a specific plan, this might be something we need to look at, because right now he can see it regardless of what he's enrolled in. So eligibility is first, contributions are second. We want to make sure that, based on the employee's age, their spouse and child's age, probably want to do a calculation. It pays off if we do this, to make sure that these costs that are displaying to the employee, they happen to be per pay period costs. Make sure they're that we expect. So the rates are true in the system and the contribution model is the same, but I always recommend going the extra step and just verifying that these are exactly what we would expect to see. I'm going to save this enrollment. I would do this for each of the plans listed here, just making sure that this is what we'd expect. Ooh, I just found something as well. So we also want to check for the experience of the employee, what messages, what targeted and custom messages we've displayed during the enrollment process. This is left over from last year. So we want to take a look and we want to update this to show any updates from the 2018 plan year. Here's another quick tip too. I usually have two tabs open or two windows open so I can toggle back and forth. I'm going to go to my instructions page. That's where that medical instructions is. Anything that might confuse the employee that we need to help guide them with, we can add additional instructions here. So here's my instructions. I'm going to change this date and then any of the other details that apply to the 2018 plans. By having two tabs open, now I can just refresh my page for the employee, and I'll see the changes that are actually being made from the employee's point of view. So some other examples might be salary-based benefits. This is one-time salary. I know that Buster has $50,000 in salary, so this looks correct. And then any guarantee issue rules, whether those apply correctly as well. So these are some good examples of what you're testing for in the whole experience. Again, best practice, walk through the entire experience from that test employee's point of view. So then finally, to finish testing, we'll want to check the enrollment forms. So I think I just enrolled in a couple of plans, and when you're looking at it from an employee's point of view, you're going to see those forms at the end and be able to sign them. So it definitely pays to take a quick look and make sure, did you name your plans correctly? So as an example, let's take a look at one of the other applications. This application actually has different plans and checkboxes. If nothing is checked, we know that we need to go back and look at how that plan was named. Let's get at another employee. this plan we know at least was set up correctly. It's checking the right box. So take a quick look at the forms, just make sure that the employee's information populates as you would expect. The type of enrollment populates, it would populate open enrollment since that's turned on. Dependents are included. If they're waiving coverage, the right waive reason. Just take a quick look before you send those forms off to Beere&Purves. So the 4 things we're checking for, again, eligibility, contributions, experience, and then completed forms, as you would expect. What I also recommend you doing is we have open enrollment turned on. I would notify the company administrator and have that company administrator log in to test as well. It really doesn't take very long to do this, and what it does is it creates buy-in from your company administrator. They have at least seen it. It's not a foreign topic to them. When employees have questions and go to them, they feel like they can answer them. They're involved in the process. If they find anything, it's kind of a sign-off for you to say, you know, you were able to test this. Quick note on how they test. When they log in, they choose personal profile. And because we have our open enrollment turned on, they'll be able to see this green button and start the open enrollment process. Testing is very, very key. I know that it doesn't happen all of the time, and I can't stress enough how helpful it is and how that 5 minutes of testing can really, really benefit you and the employees afterwards. So we've set up the plans, we've done our testing. Now we want to reset our progress. So we've used EaseCentral last year in this case, and here's the progress from last year. And what we can do is we can generate a report showing what the progress is as of today, just to have that on hand in case you want it or need it. And then when you're ready, you can reset progress using the actions button here. So I should mention too that this helps brokers and employers track to see who's completed their open enrollments. It's really best used if the enrollment is an active enrollment, and each of these employees do have to complete their enrollment before they're done, before they've completed their enrollment, basically. So that they do have to either enter or waive their elections in order to be considered complete. Next step is updating guarantee issue. So my plan or my company has a voluntary life plan that has guarantee issue amounts. This may not apply to everyone, but this particular company does have this. So what I want to do is I'm going to run, we duplicated the enrollments from last year. I'm going to choose my new plan and I'm going to run a census. Either horizontal or vertical works. Vertical just happens to be my preference. And I have the census already open. And it's going to show anyone who's enrolled in that voluntary life plan. Quick tip, I'm just going to freeze my pane so that I can kind of scroll through here and see which employee this belongs to. This is actually Life and ED&D. Let me pull up the census I just ran for voluntary. So here's our plan options. So this particular plan, and every carrier is different, so voluntary life just happens to be my favorite. But in this particular plan, whatever the employee chose last year, if they enrolled in their initial enrollment period, then anything they choose above that requires evidence of insurability. So even though the guarantee issue for new hires is normally $100,000, this particular employee, for example, Lucille, her guarantee issue this year is $60,000. If she decides to go over that, she still has to complete an evidence of insurability form. So if we go to our help desk, we have our census pulled up with everyone currently enrolled. We're going to reference our census templates, and the all-inclusive template does have the column headers for the fields that we need in order to import new guarantee issue amounts. So if you want to do this quickly with an import, you can do it with an import file. So these are the 3 key fields that we need in order to update employees' guarantee issue, like Lucille, who chose under that 100,000, but we want to make sure that anything she chooses over that will require evidence of insurability. So we know that these are our column headers: GI plan type, GI amount, and GI date. So this is anyone who logs in after this date will see that guarantee issue. Note on this, a lot of people tend to put the upcoming renewal date. That actually would be incorrect in this case. And what we would want to do here is just put any dates today or in the past, so that if we were to log in and test, or someone to log in before open enrollment, they would see that guarantee issue amount that we've entered there. So these are the column headers. What I would do is I would make this the GI plan type. Just kind of adjust your import file to include what you need here. This could be the GI amount. And then you would add a column for GI date. You can remove anything else. That's one of the tips that I like to also use, is anything that doesn't apply to your import, I usually remove from this import file. So basically, these are the 3 fields that I need. I can remove anything else on this file. I do have another file that I already have created just in the interest of time. It uses the same steps that I just walked through, except it just removes anything else not needed. So plan type, amount, and then date. So let's take this file and let's import it into our company. And this is going to update the guarantee issue amounts. Let me choose my file. Click Start Import. It's going to let us know how many people were updated. This is our test run. And with a new update that we have, you can just click Process and Finish. And it's going to automatically update that guarantee issue for employees. We go back to our file, we're going to see that, let's say, maybe Bluth and George Michael Bluth should have guarantee issue amounts of 200,000 and 70,000. Or in this case, let's check Mary Shelley or Lucille Bluth. We go to her coverage page, we're going to see guarantee issue, 60,000. Great, that's exactly what we wanted. Anything over that amount, we go to her voluntary life plan. We'll have an asterisk over it, meaning that anything above that she chooses will require evidence of insurability. Even though my plan has normally a guarantee issue amount of 100,000, that does not apply during open enrollment, and this step is required in order to accommodate those fun rules that those carriers like to do for voluntary life. All right, next up, we want to take a look at some of the manual work that maybe we or our company administrators may have done previously that we might want to get rid of for open enrollment. So one example would be benefit eligible dates. I'm going to generate a census of all of my active employees. I have that census open. And what I'm looking for is anyone who has had a benefit eligible date set for them. And I'll show you where that's typically done. So there are 2 employees that have a benefit eligible date that either we or the company administrator maybe erroneously set. So George Bluth and looks like Michael Bluth. We're going to want to go into their profiles, and under the coverage page, we want to remove that benefit eligible date. You don't need it anymore. That may have been needed for a work event or qualifying event. Now the open enrollment effective date is what takes precedence, so we'll remove those benefit eligible dates. Secondly, the other thing that we're looking for, if again this is used for any of your clients and it may not have been, remaining deduction periods. So if this was entered manually by employers who wanted the FSA calculated by the remaining deduction periods, Fred Brown is one example, so is Tobias Bluth, we'll want to remove those. That's going to be in our employment page, and we'll just remove them there. Keep in mind, this remaining deduction period is no longer needed anymore. This was an older sort of legacy feature. Now, if your company is taking advantage of pay schedules, and there's pay schedules for at least the entire plan year, I need to set my 2018 plan year, then when an employee is hired mid-year, the system automatically calculates how many remaining pay periods are left in the year, and it will populate that correct like FSA per pay period amount. So best practice, you can import or enter your client's pay periods. They can provide it to you. They can enter it here so that that automatically calculates. All right, so we've removed some of those kind of manual fields. Next, we want to take a look. This may not apply to any of your companies either. Sometimes either the employer will manually lock an employee by clicking on this padlock. Or maybe this is something you did last year. So they started open enrollment and then you sent some forms to the carriers and you didn't want those completed employees to go back in and make changes. So you manually locked them. You will want to make sure that they are unlocked for this year. If they are still locked, they will not be able to make open enrollment updates. They'll go to their employer, the employer will come to you, you'll be stumped for about 5 minutes until you come to this page. So it pays to just unlock, just kind of scroll through. Anyone who is locked, you'll want to unlock for this year. Something else though, as a best practice, really salary updates should have been entered throughout the year. So if this particular employee had a salary increase, those typically should be entered throughout the year by clicking update compensation and entering that. That's not always the case. So it might be that this time frame we need to update salaries in the system. And what that also means is we do have salary-based benefits. My life plan is one-time salary. You may have disability plans that are based on salary. So we do need to update those as well, especially if we duplicated and pushed the enrollments from one year to the other. So what we could do to do that is we could use that same census file and do it in 2 steps. One, we can update the employee's salary right on the census file and do an update or an import to get that updated in the system. I probably prefer this method. And then what we can do is run a vertical census for any salary-based benefits. In this case, the life and AD&D. We can run a census that's only going to show employees enrolled in that plan. Here is our census. It's cut down a little bit. Sorry, I'm looking at the wrong file. 1 second. So we can pare down that vertical census so that we are importing the new coverage amounts or new benefit amounts based on the new salary. In this case, I'm actually doing it all in one file. I've taken the new salary for employees and I'm uploading it at the very same time that I'm also uploading the new benefits for salary-based benefits. So obviously, this is our basic life and AD&D plan. We can check our plan ID. It begins with BW7. Yep. And this is the new amount because this is the new salary amount. And any hourly employees, what I've done to calculate this annual amount, because certainly $24 for a life and AD&D plan is not accurate. What I've done here is I've taken 24 times 40 hours per week times 52 weeks a year, and that gives us our annual salary. Pretty easy step for anyone who's hourly. Then what I'll do is I'll take this file, and same thing, we'll import it into EaseCentral. Going a little fast, but it goes employees, actions, import employees. This is also where we import plan updates. We'll choose that salary and coverage update, start import. It's going to show us any errors or discrepancies. My file is great, and I'm going to process that. So that actually updated both the compensation and the benefit at the same time. So if you have salary-based benefits, don't forget this step. You could also manually save for each employee by going into the employee's profile, going to their benefits page, and then just clicking save at the bottom. But that clearly could take a lot longer than importing. Okay, so we've gone through really all of the steps that are listed in the checklist. It seems like a lot, but we're just making sure that everything is ready for open enrollment. And again, it doesn't apply to all of those scenarios to all of our clients. We're ready to notify employees about open enrollment. So we've done our testing, we've made our tweaks, company administrator has done their testing. We can, at this point, if we want to, we can change that open enrollment date to the true start date. And then we're ready to notify employees that open enrollment is ready to begin. Best practice is each employee has an email address listed here. We'll go through options if they don't. We're actually going to choose all employees. So even if they've logged in before, we're going to choose all employees, select them all here, and we're going to send a login to those employees from the company administrator with any message that we would like. The one key thing is not to change this URL. This URL will be, for anyone who's already logged in, it'll be blues.easecentral.com, which is my particular login for this company. For anyone who hasn't logged in, it's going to be their specific registration link so that they can register and log in. And that's it. One actual step before we send this out that I want to mention that you probably want to take advantage of is you want to probably send the IP addresses and domains that this email will come from to the employer first. Actually, that step would happen before sending logins to the employer. So we're going to find that under sending employee logins. This shows us how to take those steps that we just went through. And this is going to link to the appropriate IP address and domains that we can send to the client. They can run by their IT department just to make sure that their firewall has these settings and that the emails will come through. So that's step first, then send the employee logins. If your employees are missing email addresses, let's say just some of them are missing email addresses, you can select those employees and generate a PDF login guide that can be communicated in person to that employee. Be careful. If you're printing it, make sure no one else gets it. It's not as secure as sending email logins. This Excel document, highly not recommended that you ever use. There's a purpose, and that's typically if you have enrollers on site that are assisting employees by logging in. Very, very insecure. It's one document with everyone's login. The send logins option is the most recommended. So that's it. That's the steps for walking through setting up a site for open enrollment. I do want to remind you that employees do have the option of making their elections via mobile. So if they're using their mobile phone or a tablet, this is what it looks like. So they still are allowed to enroll We have also just launched a mobile application. The application is not for enrolling in benefits. It's actually for viewing benefit summaries after the fact and more of our HRIS features. So the enrollment does need to happen at least on a mobile device using a browser, which is what we're seeing here, or online using a tablet or computer. So we set up open enrollment. Now it's time to manage the open enrollment changes. One really good tip that I don't think all of our brokers and company administrators are using is this feedback report that we have made available to both of you. So as employees are completing their elections, this typically would show any recent feedback. We can see exactly what they're saying. So this particular employee is looking for a higher deductible. Maybe for some reason they were unable to open a document. The plan summary was not opening, it was a different format. Something happened when you tried to upload that. Recently I saw feedback for a company that had bundled plans, and there were no custom instructions that were sent to the employee letting them know, hey, if you choose this medical plan, you have to enroll in dental at the same coverage tier. The employee was confused. They kept trying to waive and they couldn't do it. And so if the broker or employer had just entered those custom instructions, which is back on the customized page, this would have saved that employee a lot of headache and time. So maybe on that dental plan, this plan is bundled with medical, and provide instructions for that. So that feedback report from employees is really helpful to anticipate any potential issues or improvements that you can make to improve their experience. That was under reports and feedback. Next, anytime you log in as a broker and you have a company that's during open enrollment, you're going to see this company listed here. You can quickly click on that company and check the progress. Clearly, we just reset that progress, but you'll start seeing more employees completed or finished. If you want to run a report to find out who those nice people are that finished and who the bad people are that haven't started, you can do that using the actions generate report. And really the best practice, depending on how long your open enrollment is, I would definitely send an email out to employees 3 days before the end date, anyone who has not started or is in progress. And if you have a 2-week open enrollment, maybe 7 days in, you might also want to send an email. So typically it should be sent from the company administrator, or if they know you as a broker, then also from you. You can send a separate message to those that haven't started saying, hey, you have 5 days left, in a really nice way. And then you can send a separate message to those that are in progress saying, I noticed that you started your enrollment, that you may have some questions. Please reach out to HR or your broker, whoever is helping you. This is totally optional, so this will help you stay on top of progress to see how people are doing. Whereas in the past, it was just kind of a black hole of not knowing where everyone was at. Something that can also be done, totally not needed, but some employers and brokers are providing an enrollment summary, either to employees that are about to start their open enrollment or have finished their open enrollment. And it can be done by selecting all of the plans and choosing, let's say, if it's for the last plan year's enrollment, you would choose current summaries. If it's for the upcoming enrollments, open enrollment summaries. And the point is they're distributed to employees and letting the employees know this is what you have unless you make changes at this open enrollment. This is what you'll have unless you have a qualifying event. This is above and beyond, but it is an option that some employers are using. Just know that it's there. The other option I mentioned earlier is, let's say open enrollment has not ended yet, and we wanted to send our applications in batches, either to Beere&Purves or to the carriers. You can do this. It's actually not something I recommend, but I know a lot of our broker partners do this. So if we know that these particular employees have completed their enrollment, even though it's open enrollment, we can lock them so they can't make changes. So we know we have their form, and if they do need to make a change, they have to go to someone, and they have to be unlocked directly in order to make a change. I don't particularly agree with that because employees do have until the entire open enrollment timeframe to make changes if they decide to with their spouse, if they go home. I think it should be left open and that all of the changes should be communicated after open enrollment. So if that's the case, a couple of options. You can run an enrollment changes report. In the past, you had to do it by plan type. Now you can run it for everything at once, showing the enrollment changes. And it's going to show differences from last plan year to this plan year. So that is one option. Let me pull one up that has been run. So this is for a different company, and it's going to show, we'll go down to medical. It's going to show anyone who's changed their coverage tier. So this particular employee added their spouse and children, and this particular employee changed their plan. So the two things that it's really looking for are coverage tier changes and plan changes. This can be really helpful for you to verify if you rolled out a high deductible health plan. You want to see what movement was like, what plans people moved from. Was it the HMO? Was it the PPO? You'll be able to identify those changes here. The other purpose is if the carriers only want to receive changes, you'll know exactly which changes to send. However, there's a new update that has occurred that's going to make that process much easier. So if you only want to generate enrollment forms for employees that have had changes, choose all plans, choose reports, enrollment forms, and you can check this box, and only employees that had a coverage tier or plan change will be included in this list of forms. So super helpful for this year. It's actually a new feature as of a couple of months ago. Or obviously, if you're just looking to run forms for specific employees, you can choose those here. The other option, of course, is if you're running forms or generating forms for all employees, just leave both of these blank and click generate. It's going to generate a one PDF file for each carrier, and it will have all of the enrollments for that particular carrier on one form. Here's a great example. So here's an Anthem form. I'm not dealing with multiple forms for each employee's multiple PDFs. It's all listed here. And if you're also looking for waiver forms for any employees who waived coverage, those can be included as well. So you'll just want to make sure that, and this actually could be done prior to open enrollment, but on the customized page, we want to make sure that we have this multi-carrier waiver form selected. And what that does is it generates true enrollments and waiver forms all in one PDF. Here's one of the employees that waived. So we have our forms. We managed open enrollment. It was much easier. The forms are completed. We're not going back and forth with the employer. We used our progress report, and we're ready to send these off to the Beere&Purves team. So we're going to go to our partners page. And actually, I'm sure that you've done this already, but in your company, in your broker's marketplace, you would request access to Beere&Purves as a partner. Once you've done that on any of your company pages, under benefits and partners, you can also request to submit enrollments for this particular company. So I've already done this, but you would choose add partner and choose Beere&Purves as the option for the particular plans that you're looking to submit. They've already approved that request for this particular company, and we're ready to submit our renewal forms off to the Beere&Purves team. We choose which plans we want to include. In this case, just the 2018 plans. Add any appropriate documents, so it might be the employer application, anything else that they might need with the submission. Any notes, if you work with a particular rep, you can include that rep name here. And when you're ready to submit, you click Submit to Partner, and this goes off to the Beere&Purves team. I know that's one way of submitting to them. They do also are amazing, and they're already also included. Sometimes they have access to your system, so reach out to them either way to see what the preference is. This just makes it very easy for you to go ahead and submit to them right off the bat. So that's basically it. I do want to mention that in the past, you would have had to close the old plans before open enrollment started. We didn't have to do that this year. And I should have mentioned that by not doing that, what the employee sees when they enroll, and this is part of our testing experience, is they'll see last year's election with a cost, and then they'll see this plan year's options with a new cost. So basically they can compare. When they show comparisons, they're going to see last year's plan details and election and cost compared to this plan year's details. And of course, you would have been able to choose which plans are included. All right, so the other thing is when you have your new hires that have already completed their enrollment, and this is set on the customized page. So if you want new hires to be able to, sorry, I'm skipping around. So if you wanted to show that current election during open enrollment on this customized page, this is the option you would select, so that employee, just like we saw with Buster Blues, could see the current elections alongside with their upcoming open enrollment elections. So this step can be completed as well. Once any new hires or all new hires have completed their enrollments for the upcoming plan year, at that point you can go ahead and close the old plans. Really easy to do. In the old plans, you'll just change the available end date to be a date in the past, so any time before today. When we do that, the plan falls off the list. Employees do not see the option to enroll in that plan any longer. So make sure all your new hires have completed, or all the company's new hires have completed their elections before you do that. And it certainly can be done after the plan year has started. So that is it. We walked through our open enrollment setup list, our open enrollment management checklist. Obviously, feel free to reach out to our success team via phone or through an email. We have a lot of supporting information on our help desk. We saw earlier, I highly recommend to take a look at our open enrollment checklist. So you don't have to try to listen to this webinar again. It's all documented in our open enrollment best practices checklist. And there's basically 4 different open enrollment solutions that are geared towards helping you do setup and management of open enrollment. At this point, let's see if there's any questions. So let's see, Cole, I don't know if you have the ability to see if there's any questions that have been entered.
Yes, I do. So there are a few questions. I don't know if you could see them on your end. So the first question is going to be, what if an employee doesn't use an email? Is there a cell phone field instead? And can you send an invite to them via text?
Not at this time. So usually you definitely can enter their mobile phone number in their profile. And what this does is if they forget their password, then they have the ability of retrieving it through their mobile phone number. They get a text that way if they forget it. But initially, in order to get their password, they do need an email address listed in the system. So that doesn't have to be a work email address. It can be a personal email address, but this at least gets them their login to begin with.
Cool. So the next question might be more of one that maybe we need some more detail on down the road, but it sounds like a connectivity question. So when entering a new group that has 2 entities and will integrate with payroll, how can we set up the 2 divisions so that they map correctly for payroll purposes?
That's going to definitely depend on the company and how the payroll provider is doing it. Different payroll providers might do it differently. A lot of times, the payroll provider might have one portal set up with different pay groups. And what could be done is, for example, they might have an administration pay group and a warehouse pay group that have different tax IDs, but it's under one portal. It's really going to depend on the company, and this is a question that should be asked of both a payroll company and EaseCentral on what the best practice is in that case. But potentially it can be done under the one portal in EaseCentral. In some cases, with some payroll companies that may not have the ability to map this to a separate pay group in their system, probably not common, but if that's the case, then you might have to set up 2 different portals.
Okay. And then the next one is going to be, are there any issues with an employee not being able to finish the enrollment process but not sign their application?
I think that's a common thing that we've seen. So we can't necessarily, we've made the process really easy for an employee during the experience to see that they have to sign their forms in order to complete them. But some employees are just going to X out of their browser before actually completing that step. So it's going to happen. You'll see that in the progress report. You'll see whether they have finished or not. Again, that was on our benefits and progress page. If they have started their enrollments but have not signed, they will be in an in-progress status. If they're in a finished status, that means they signed. So this is where that email going to employees, letting them know, hey, you have to actually complete your elections, you may not have signed, that will come into play in that case.
Cool. And yeah, just to, I guess, add on to that, I mean, as little as what a little mark could be considered a signature too. And then as far as the apps for open enrollment changes, is there anything that in particular about those that the broker should know about? I guess for like ads, deletes, plan changes.
Yeah, so we do have some change forms in our system, not for all. I know that that's something that is an initiative for us to map going forward. A lot of the applications that we use are going to be the initial enrollment apps, which typically are able to be used by carriers even at open enrollment. If the carrier is a stickler and they need a changes form, we do have some changes forms that are mapped. I know California Choice is one example, and you'll notice that in our library it's designated with changes. So some of them say demographic changes only, and that just means that it's only going to populate the demographic part of the form. Some of the change forms actually will populate the new enrollments, but the logic is that it's mapped like an initial enrollment form. It's only going to show those people that are enrolled. It's not going to show whether someone terminated, and it may not check all of the boxes on the form, like why are they changing, what was the previous enrollment. So if that's the case, testing the enrollment forms will be really key so you know what's completed and what isn't. There may be additional steps that are needed on change forms for carriers at open enrollment if that's exactly what they need.
Perfect, thank you. And then the last 2 questions, can EaseCentral do ACH billing on behalf of the broker?
So I think what that means is the billing or can we pay the carriers? Is that how a correct interpretation of that question?
That's what I'm thinking.
Not at this time. So we're not taking on billing, consolidated billing and payment services where We actually pay the carriers based on the enrollments that are in our system. We do have reports in our system that help with auditing carrier invoices, but we're not taking on that service at this time. If you're interested in that service, definitely reach out to our customer success team. There are some partners that we know of that do that service, and some of them use our system to do it. The reports that could be used for auditing bills is this consolidated billing report, or certainly creating a custom report kind of based on what that carrier reports, and using those to help audit against those carrier invoices.
Perfect. And the last question, as we just get over 3, if any other questions come in, we will respond to those directly. But it's going to be, can you upload a username for members with no email access that will allow them to log in through the customized URL? I think it's just like, is there a way to kind of like mass create the usernames, I guess unique ones, but logical ones?
Good question. Since it's not a best practice, I'd have to dig through. It's possible. I know that obviously they can be entered. Some of you might know this better than I, but it definitely can be entered one-on-one for each employee. Instead of using an email address, a username can be used. It may be an option to import these. It's been a while since we've done so, because again, it's really not a best practice. So we can get back to you with an answer.
Okay, perfect. Well, thank you so much, Sarah, and thank you everybody for joining the call. We'll work on the extra questions that have come in, but we do appreciate your time, and yeah, like Sarah said, feel free to reach out to EaseCentral support team, or you can reach out to us, Beere&Purves, and we're happy to help you with your new group setup, renewals for groups that are with us. Whatever you may need. We will be sending out a follow-up email too with the recording, and feel free to respond to that with any questions that you may have. So thank you again, and thank you, Sarah. Appreciate it.
Thanks, everyone.